Two cops arrest a woman they think looks suspicious. Too bad she's a top military strategist with direct lines to the Department of Defense. What starts as routine harassment turns into a national scandal and a masterclass in what real power looks like. Franklin, Georgia, 7:12 a.m. The early morning sky was a muted ash gray, quietly settling over the normally peaceful stretch of Jefferson Street. The only sounds were the wind brushing past rows of aging brick buildings and the steady footfalls of Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison on the stone-paved sidewalk. She had just stepped out of a black Chevrolet Suburban, parked in front of a small local coffee shop, intending to grab an espresso before a classified briefing at Ashcroft Defense Command. At 54, Cassandra didn't need a uniform to command attention. Her upright stride, neatly pinned salt and pepper hair, and the steely gaze of someone who led thousands of troops in foreign theaters were more than enough to project authority. Even today, dressed only in khaki pants, a dark button-down shirt, and a windbreaker trench coat. But to Sergeant Brian Calloway and Officer Jake Reynolds, two officers just starting their morning shift, what they first saw wasn't a commanding presence. They saw a black woman stepping out of an expensive vehicle. Calloway gave a low whistle, hand resting near the Glock holstered on his hip. "Fancy ride, huh, Reynolds?" "Yeah," Reynolds replied, half joking, half serious, his eyes fixed on Cassandra. "Looks a little suspicious." Cassandra was nearing the coffee shop entrance when a voice barked behind her, "Ma'am, hold up a second." Calloway's tone was far from courteous. She turned slowly, her eyes drifting from the badge on his chest to the simmering challenge in his stare. "Is there a problem, officer?" "Got a report about a vehicle matching this description, involved in a property theft nearby. Yours is a perfect match. This Suburban is registered under my name. I just came from the airport. There are cameras and GPS records, if you'd like to check." But the two officers weren't looking for evidence. They were looking for submission. Calloway stepped forward, unhooking a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "You're showing signs of resisting a lawful command." "No," Cassandra replied, her voice iron-hard. "I'm asking for your legal grounds." She didn't get another word out. Reynolds grabbed one arm while Calloway twisted the other violently behind her back. The snap of the handcuffs rang out across the quiet street, sharp and cold as a gunshot. A small crowd began to gather. Horrified stares turned toward Cassandra, now forced face down onto the Suburban's hood, yet still holding her posture, refusing to yield. Calloway's voice was a sneer in her ear. "Who's in command now, huh?" And then, in the humiliation of being cuffed in the street, Cassandra did not scream. She did not tremble. She simply said, her voice low and lethal, "You've just made the biggest mistake of your careers." Hands cupped behind her back, forehead still resting lightly against the cold metal hood. Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison didn't resist. She didn't need to. The dignity of a woman who had survived combat in Africa, who had made life-or-death decisions during special operations in Syria, could not be broken by a pair of steel cuffs or two men who fancied themselves the face of the law. In the eyes of Reynolds and Calloway, she was just another black woman who looked a little too confident stepping out of a late-model SUV to grab coffee from a modest street cafe. What they didn't know was this: the woman they had just arrested wasn't civilian. She was the chief strategist for the entire Eastern Defense Command of the United States military. She had landed just hours earlier on a classified flight from Ramstein Air Base to Andrews. A high-level operation had just concluded, its after-action report too sensitive to transmit over secure channels. Cassandra was en route to Ashcroft Defense Command, ADC, just 8 miles away, to deliver it in person. No one at ADC yet knew that a 3-star general had just been publicly humiliated on Jefferson Street by the very people sworn to protect justice. "Any prior convictions?" Reynolds asked, scrolling through a tablet, his voice tinged with smug anticipation, like he was about to catch someone red-handed. "You should stop," Cassandra replied, voice calm and frighteningly composed, "before this gets out of your control." Calloway scoffed. "We have the authority to detain and question individuals who display noncompliance. You didn't follow a lawful order. And you just handcuffed a 3-star general in the United States military on her way to a strategic command center," she said, turning her head slowly, her gaze sharp as a blade. Do you even begin to comprehend what that means? A brief silence fell, sudden and heavy. Wait, what did she say? Reynolds stammered, brow furrowing. Even the mocking smile on Calloway's face twitched with unease. Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison. She enunciated each word crisply. Security verification code for Alpha 7 Delta. That alone is enough to trigger a command-level alert at ADC within 10 minutes. The space around them seemed to freeze. Some of the bystanders had started filming. Calloway's once triumphant expression began to harden into something else, concern. Cassandra drew in a slow, controlled breath. The fury, held tight beneath the steel discipline of a soldier, now curled into every word she spoke. You don't know what you've just triggered, but I promise you it's coming. Fast. Oh, so we got ourselves a lieutenant general now, huh? Calloway sneered, rolling his eyes as though he'd just heard a tired joke. Jake, you hear that? We got a general under arrest. Maybe she used Command Batman too. Reynolds burst into laughter, dry and mocking. What's next? She calls on the Avengers to pick her up? Their laughter echoed through the heavy air, thick with disdain. It pierced a wound Cassandra had known all her life. The kind of laugh she'd heard from people who didn't believe a black woman could ever rise to the rank of general. And that was exactly what made her stand taller. Go ahead and laugh, she said quietly, her gaze calm, but sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. Every second you keep me like this, your file grows line by line, and I guarantee it'll be read aloud in front of a disciplinary review board in less than 72 hours. You threatening law enforcement? Calloway snapped. No, Cassandra replied, voice steady as stone. I'm documenting a systemic arrogance built on two things, skin color and a license plate. She lifted her head slightly, locking eyes with a bystander's phone camera. There are enough witnesses to show this has nothing to do with resisting arrest. This is about the fact that you couldn't stand me not bowing my head. Calloway suddenly gripped her shoulder tighter, leaning in to mutter low enough for only her to hear. I don't care who you are. To me, you're just another mouthy civilian in a suspicious car. That car was issued to me by the U.S. government, Cassandra replied instantly without flinching. And if you'd like to know why I'm driving it, call the Department of Defense Security office. A sharp wind blew through Jefferson Street. The people of Franklin were gathering, more now than before. Some stood across the street. Others pulled their cars to the curb. Phones raised in the air, like they were filming a high-stakes moment from a modern American documentary. Calloway turned to Reynolds, voice clipped. Book her. File for detainment. Listed as non-compliance and possible impersonation. How exactly do I write that? Reynolds asked, half joking, half nervous. Fake general in a late-model SUV, parked improperly and making eye contact that upset an officer. Calloway shot him a warning glare. Follow the damn procedure. Cassandra closed her eyes for a moment. What she felt wasn't just anger, it was a bone-deep exhaustion. The kind every black person in power has known. You can shape national defense strategy and still be treated like an intruder because of the color of your skin. But this time, she wasn't staying quiet. A small crowd had gathered around the gleaming black Suburban, like ink spilled across the gray pavement. Voices murmured, phones recorded, a few streamed live. And in the center of it all stood Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison, hands bound behind her, head held high, her eyes unwavering. It made sense, really. She had once commanded a nighttime assault to retake a military base in Kandahar under a storm of gunfire, where one wrong move meant comrades returning home in flag-draped coffins. Compared to that, being cuffed on Jefferson Street was just a bad morning. Then a hesitant voice cut through the tension. Ma'am, are you okay? Cassandra turned her head slowly, seeking the source. A young black man, maybe close to 30, stood nearby in a gray hoodie, phone in hand. His gaze wasn't just concerned. It held the kind of recognition that something wasn't right. Something that went beyond what America had taught people call normal. What's your name? Cassandra asked, her voice calm but firm. Marcus. Marcus DeWitt. I'm recording everything. Marcus, I need your help. I'm going to give you a number. You need to call it now. No hesitation. When they answer, all you say is, "I'm calling on behalf of Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison. She's being unlawfully detained on Jefferson Street in the city of Franklin." "Got that?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Yes, but what's the number?" Cassandra took a deep breath, then spoke with a precise cadence honed over decades of command. 202-555-9117. Verification code, Charlie Tango Echo 49. Marcus keyed it in instantly. The moment he hit call, Calloway spun around. "What the hell are you two doing?" he barked, charging toward Marcus. And then, something no one expected happened. A third officer, a young woman named Officer Lila Chun, had arrived on scene and witnessed everything from across the street. She stepped out her patrol car, removed her sunglasses, and shouted, "Calloway, stand down now." The crowd went dead silent. Calloway froze mid-step. "You're threatening a civilian for filming a police stop? Do you even know how many policies that violates?" She snapped. "Chun, you don't understand the situation here." "I understand enough," she replied, already reaching for her radio. "And I'll be reporting exactly what I saw." Two officers initiated a stop with no clear probable cause, used force, and refused to verify the identity of an individual carrying a military ID. An individual who just identified herself as Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison. Marcus's phone still rang until finally a female, automated voice answered. "This is the emergency line for Ashcroft Defense Command. Please confirm security code." Marcus hesitated. Cassandra spoke up clearly, her voice ringing out for the entire street to hear. "Charlie Tango Echo 49. This is Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison. I am being unlawfully detained. Request immediate verification of rank and authority." And just seconds later, a real voice came through the line, serious, cold, and commanding. "General Ellison? Emergency signal received. Protocol has been activated. All local units are to stand down immediately." The voice wasn't loud, but in the air strung tighter than wire. It sliced like a klaxon in a war room. Reynolds turned pale almost instantly. Calloway stood frozen, as if someone had pulled the plug on his nervous system. Midsummer Georgia heat be damned. Marcus still held the phone, eyes wide, staring at Cassandra with an entirely different expression now. He didn't know much about the military, but just hearing someone on the other end refer to her as General Ellison and watching the way both officers reacted was enough to tell him he had just called something civilians weren't meant to dial. "WH, what just happened?" Reynolds stammered. "She's the real deal? Like actual command?" Officer Lila Chun, who had stepped in just moments earlier, nodded firmly. "No doubt about it now. You two just handcuffed a high-ranking officer in the Department of Defense. This isn't just a procedural error anymore. This is a state-level legal crisis, maybe even federal." Calloway was the first to find his voice again, but it had lost all its weight. He stammered toward Cassandra. Why didn't you just say so earlier?" Cassandra turned her head slowly, eyes colder than the Rockies in January. "I have no obligation to disclose classified details to two men detaining me because I look like someone. I told you I had the right to make a call. You denied me a basic civil liberty, then slammed me against my own vehicle like a criminal. Don't ask why I didn't make you comfortable." At that moment, Reynolds' radio crackled to life with the panicked voice of the dispatch center. "Unit 12, cancel all engagement with the suspect. Ashcroft command level verification has been triggered. Station chief is en route to your location. Be advised, continued detainment may constitute criminal misconduct and abuse of power." Calloway's jaw dropped. He looked at Reynolds like he was waiting for anyone, to tell him what to do. Cassandra exhaled, closing her eyes for a beat, as if giving them one last chance to retreat with dignity. But when she opened them, her voice cut like tempered steel. "Remove the cuffs." Reynolds fumbled like a scolded child digging for keys after curfew. His hands shook so badly he dropped the handcuffs. The metallic clatter on the pavement was sharp, harsh, the sound of a power illusion shattering. Calloway tried to steady himself, but sweat had already soaked through his collar. He bent down slightly, murmuring like a man pleading not for mercy, but for time. We didn't know who you were. We were just following procedure." "No," Cassandra replied, her tone cold and razor-sharp. "You were following prejudice. And where that takes you now, I'll leave to the law to decide." A final transmission came through the radio, clear and commanding. "All units on Jefferson Street, hold position. Do not approach the subject. Await directive from commanding officer." The command echoed once more through the radio, this time sharper, more commanding the crack of a rifle. The entire area fell into complete silence, as if the city of Franklin had just been ordered to stop time. For a few seconds, no one moved. Calloway stood frozen. Reynolds gripped the handcuffs like he was holding a live grenade. And Marcus, the one who'd been recording from the start, was now live streaming on Facebook, captioned, "Army General wrongfully arrested. Local cops losing control." A white SUV with government plates turned onto Jefferson Street, slicing through the tension like a blade. Its door swung open before the vehicle had even come to a full stop. Out stepped a tall man in a white shirt and askew tie, holding an active radio in one hand. His face was pale as ash, sweat soaking both sides of his temples. "Chief Randall Mays, Franklin Police Department," he announced almost instinctively, not waiting for anyone to ask. "Where are we? What the hell is going on here?" he barked, though his voice was more panicked than authority. Officer Lila Chin stepped forward. "Sir, Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison was just unlawfully detained by these two officers." She confirmed her identity through a military emergency line. "I arrived midway through the incident. There are witnesses and multiple recordings from the public." Mays turned toward Calloway and Reynolds, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You two, are you out of your minds? You cuffed a high-ranking general from Ashcroft Command? In broad daylight? On the street? On camera? We didn't know," Calloway stammered. "Didn't know? Then why the hell did you cuff her? Why didn't you verify anything? What does look suspicious even mean? That's a government vehicle. How is that suspicious?" Mays was nearly shouting now, glancing nervously at the raised phones of bystanders like they were sparks waiting to ignite a firestorm. Cassandra stood nearby, her cuffs now removed, her expression as composed and stern as a commander surveying a battlefield. "Chief Mays," she said, her voice low but weighted, every word like stone hitting the ground. "I want confirmation that you are fully aware of what just happened, and that you have heard the response from my command." Mays nodded rapidly. "Yes, General Ellison. I sincerely apologize. This will be handled. Personally, I'll see to it that both officers are suspended immediately and an independent investigation is launched." "Not enough," Cassandra said flatly. "I will speak directly with the Department of Defense. This isn't just a procedural failure. It's living proof of systemic bias and discrimination." From a corner down the block, the distant sound of sirens began to rise. The rapid response convoy from Ashcroft Defense Command was closing in, their silver-white military vehicles cutting through traffic like scalpels. Reynolds muttered under his breath. They're really coming?" Calloway said nothing. His head hung low, eyes locked on the dust-covered tips of his boots, the exact spot where his illusion of power had been crushed beneath a general's stride. The air on Jefferson Street had thickened, dense like the fog after a storm. Cassandra Ellison stood in the middle of the road, the red marks from the handcuffs still visible on her wrist, but her expression didn't belong to someone who had just been rescued. It was the face of a commander launching a counteroffensive. Calloway and Reynolds stood nearby, eyes glued to the pavement. Every apology they mumbled came out like it had to be dragged from collapsed lungs. We're sincerely sorry, General," Reynolds whispered. "We didn't realize. And if I were a nurse, a teacher, a single mother," Cassandra cut in, her gaze unblinking, "would you still have cuffed me because I didn't look like I should be driving that car?" Silence. Cassandra pulled out her phone. She opened her contacts, scrolled to one marked SecDef Direct, and pressed call. A woman's voice answered, sharp, composed, authoritative. "Helen Draper." "Secretary Draper," Cassandra said, "I am requesting an immediate internal investigation into two officers from the Franklin Police Department, Brian Calloway and Jake Reynolds." I want a full review of their patrol logs, citizen complaints, and traffic stops conducted in the past 24 months. Request noted. Do you want it escalated to the federal system? Immediately, as the tension reached a breaking point, Calloway's phone started ringing. He looked at the screen, eyes wide. "It's my wife," he muttered. Reynolds glanced over. "She's calling now?" Calloway answered, but before he could speak, a voice screamed to the receiver. "Brian, what the hell did you do? Your video's trending. It's got almost 1 million views. They're calling you the General Cuffing Cop online." The entire street went quiet. Cassandra tilted her head, her expression a mix of restrained fury and chilling satisfaction. "That title's probably not leaving your personnel file anytime soon." Marcus, still live streaming, added with a grin, "Hashtag General Cuffing Cop is now the #1 trending topic in Georgia. They're making memes with your face, Calloway." Cassandra didn't laugh. "Shame the real consequences aren't memes," she said, turning back to phone. "Helen, I want all follow-up reports sent directly to me. No intermediaries." "Understood, General Ellison. The department is already in contact with the DOJ. This is no longer a local issue." Chief Randall Mays stood off to the side, gripping his police cap so tightly his knuckles turned white, face flushed with embarrassment. "General Ellison," he said, voice low, "we will cooperate fully. You have my word." "You'll do more than that, Chief Mays," Cassandra said, turning to face him. "You'll ensure that every action taken by these 2 officers, from their first stop to this morning, is brought into the light." A military SUV pulled up along the curb. A uniformed officer from Ashcroft Defense Command stepped out and snapped to attention. "Vehicle is ready to transport you to the base, ma'am. The Secretary of Defense has requested a direct briefing." Cassandra approached the vehicle, then turned one last time to address the street. "I will not allow myself to be the exception that gets protected. I will be the reason this system has to change." And with that, the door shut behind her. Jefferson Street was left with murmurs, camera flashes, and 2 officers standing in the eye of a storm called truth. The next morning, the news erupted across every outlet. The front page of the Franklin Daily Gazette left no room for ambiguity. "Officer cuffs the wrong general. Department of Defense intervenes." In the corner of CNN's broadcast screen, the hashtag wrong rank, wrong move, was now the #1 trending topic across Georgia. The video of Officer Calloway cuffing Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison in the middle of the street had been shared millions of times in under 24 hours. Online, users flooded timelines with memes, comparing Calloway to everything from cartoon villains to failed mall security guards. "This isn't a joke. This is prejudice getting exposed in broad daylight," read one top comment beneath Marcus's original video, with over 80,000 likes. Meanwhile, inside the Franklin Police Department, the atmosphere was frigid, like the air before a high-level interrogation. Calloway and Reynolds were summoned to Chief Randall Mays' office in complete silence. On his desk sat a thick stack of documents, a report from the Department of Defense, letters from the Department of Justice, and, what made both men sweat, an emergency suspension order signed personally by Secretary Helen Draper. "You are both immediately suspended without pay," Mays said, each word hitting the old wooden floor like a gavel. "We will conduct an internal investigation, but given the severity, this will be forwarded directly to the Federal Office of Internal Affairs." "Chief, we were just doing our job," Reynolds tried to defend. "You overstep your job," Mays cut him off, fury in his eyes. "And now, you will face the consequences." The 2 men left the office in silence. The badges they once wore with pride were handed in, lying motionless in a cold plastic tray. 3 days later, at a special press conference called by the Franklin County District Attorney's Office, the prosecutor announced the charges. Officers Brian Calloway and Jake Reynolds are being charged with 3 counts: abuse of authority, unlawful detainment, and systemic violation of civil rights. They have both been questioned by the Office of Military Security, and federal prosecution will proceed. Behind the rows of press seating, Marcus DeWitt watched quietly. He had printed a photo of Cassandra, standing tall in the street, hands cuffed, eyes unshaken, and hung it on the wall of his small print shop, a symbol of defiance. On social media, another video clip was circulating. Cassandra walking through the glass doors of Ashcroft Defense Command, the title above it reading, "They try to make her bow. Now they kneel before the truth." On Monday morning, sunlight spilled over the neatly trimmed lawns outside the gates of Ashcroft Defense Command. American flags and military colors fluttered in the breeze as Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison, clutching a classified briefing folder, walked through the automated glass entrance. Her posture was upright, her gaze focused, and each step she took seemed to stamp out the lingering echoes of bias left behind on Jefferson Street. At that very moment, on the TV screen mounted in the main lobby, WGN Atlanta's morning broadcast aired live footage of two men in dress shirts being led in handcuffs by federal officers into the Franklin County Courthouse. Brian Calloway and Jake Reynolds. Roles now reversed. "That's wild," a security officer whispered to his colleague. "Last week, he was patrolling around here like he was some kind of hero." Cassandra heard it, but she didn't react. She didn't need anyone to validate her honor. It had been forged through decades of service, not praise or apology. Instead, she stopped in front of a group of young recruits lined up for assignment. A young second lieutenant, brown-skinned, his uniform still crisp, recognized her first. He snapped to attention, eyes wide as if he were seeing a living legend. "Lieutenant General Ellison," he said, "we've all seen the news. What you did, it inspired the whole unit." Cassandra gave a slight nod. "Inspiration is good," she said, "but don't let it stop at feelings." She looked directly at each of them. "You may wear rank on your shoulders. You may command tanks or helicopters. But when you step off base, some will see your skin color before your service. And you must be ready to face that, not with rage, but with truth and the strength of the law." Her voice wasn't dramatic. It was low, steady, each word like a hammer striking hot steel. "Don't bow your head, and don't bow your back to hatred. Stand tall, and move forward." When the morning briefing at Ashcroft Defense Command began, Lieutenant General Cassandra Ellison took her seat at the command table, surrounded by senior officers from across the military branches and national security agencies. On the large screen at the front of the room, maps and intelligence reports flickered to life. But in the minds of many seated there, the real story sweeping across the nation wasn't about foreign threats or strategic assets. It was about a war within, where prejudice wore plain clothes and carried a badge. Cassandra didn't mention Jefferson Street during the meeting. She didn't have to. Her presence at that table, calm, resolute, and unbowed, spoke louder than any speech ever could. At officer training academies across the United States, the incident in Franklin has now been officially added to the curriculum under the title, "True Power is Knowing When to Stand," not for retaliation, but for correction. In a rare interview aired on 60 Minutes, when Cassandra was asked if she felt anger over how she was treated, she responded with just one sentence. "I'm not angry that I was treated like a civilian. I'm angry that so many civilians are treated like they're not worthy of respect. And they don't have an emergency line to the Pentagon." The interviewer fell silent. She continued, "I didn't act because I'm a general. I acted because if even I stay silent, then who speaks of those with no rank, no power, no one willing to vouch for them?" And perhaps that's why Cassandra's story resonated so powerfully. Not because she was a general, but because she stood as living proof that, when injustice wears a mask of authority, truth, whether in uniform or in plain clothes, is a weapon no handcuff can hold. The story may close here, but its echoes do not. Because this wasn't just a story of a black woman wrongfully arrested. It was a reminder to America itself. Justice doesn't require shouting, only that we do not bow,